curriculum from Reach in the sense of 21st century skills, because I really do believe that they did a lot to incorporate things from all around the world into their curriculum. From the stories that we read, the big book that we had, and all the little small books. I mean, you can see that they were very intentional about including peoples from all around the world into their illustrations, into their books. Even going so far as to include like some things in Spanish that we learned in one of our units on family, I believe it was. So it was a very interesting. It was a very interesting opportunity for us to give them a broader world view, which is, I think, a huge part of the 21st century skills is help develop in the education industry until studying with Teach Now. So at my school, I didn't at SMIT school, and even at the school that I'm currently teaching at, which is an international school, they don't really have that kind of mindset of let's make sure we're always trying to keep up with these 21st century skills and the new kinds of frameworks that are coming out, like being knowledgeable of them, seeing how they could be applicable and beneficial to our schools. I just haven't seen that. I think that's probably something that's rare in China, at least, or at least abroad. But maybe in other schools in America, that'd be more. I think, normal for schools to be trying to figure out how could they be adopting some of these things. But for the most part, I haven't experienced that here in China. I would say they don't. They don't try to find the relevance of how the curriculum can adopt 21st century skills into the classroom.
And actually, there's
an excerpt from Vanessa Jinks. Go ahead.
In an education, the Innovative Educators Group, I find that actually it seems as though a lot of international schools here are owned by Chinese owners, and they're run by Chinese administration. And more so than not, it seems that there's a ban on student phones rather than helping students to be responsible with technology. They just say no cell phones. And someone pointed out actually in a discussion today that was taking place that it just removes a symptom. Like just taking away from the classroom doesn't actually help kids to control their urges with cell phones. It just kind of puts a Band-Aid on it. Like you think, okay, well, when that kid is on their bus ride home or when they're at home, are they being productive with their time, with free access to their cell phone? And are teachers preparing them for that freedom? And are parents preparing them for that freedom? Or are we just kind of saying like, we're not going to include it in the classroom because this is a distraction and it's not our problem?
But I like the fourth question actually asks me, how do I do this in my own class? What are the expectations to model 21st century approaches in your classroom? And what does it look like in your classroom? Well, I will say this, that my whole teaching experience has been in China, and I have not had there's never really been any expectations from the school put onto me to use 21st century skills. However, I still want to strive to be the best teacher that I can be. So I do implement 21st century skills in my classroom. And just I think one of the things so I'll approach this question from two places. One of them is being self-sufficient in the classroom. In order to do that, the students, if they're going to be able to divide up into groups and do group work doing one thing, this group's doing one thing, this group's doing a completely different thing, but working on the same kind of assignment, they have to have a lot of really good there has to be a lot of really good procedures and classroom routines established so that they know exactly how to do the activities that they're doing. If they don't know what they're supposed to do, I need a pencil sharpener, or I have a question that I would like to ask the teacher, instead of asking me the questions that they have, they are required to ask at least 2 of their classmates before asking me a question about an assignment. So this happened just yesterday. I was praising one of my students for walking up to me, and she's for me or us provided by the school. The school doesn't really provide professional development. Not at SMIC school. I don't know about our current school. They said that they were going to, but I always am like, I'm very skeptical. So
you mean even your current school?
Yeah,
okay.
I think all the skills that I have developed in regard to 21st century skills have been the professional development that I've received help in from Teach Now and my own self-study. Yeah, and my own self-study. Sometimes in January of this year, I did go to Carol Ann Tomlinson's differentiation webinar. It was actually a workshop. It was a 2-day workshop, and it was pretty good. I expected to see a lot more differentiation in there, but it was good. I liked it. I learned to love to have tablets for all of the students. I would also like to have virtual reality. Oh man, that would be awesome. Virtual reality, like we could travel to Machu Picchu instead of just looking at pictures. I want to go to Easter Island to look at the big statues. No problem. Put on my perspective on Chinese native students and why. Yes, absolutely I do. I think it's very effective because they're skills. And I really believe that skills can be learned by anybody, no matter what culture they're from or what kind of thinking that they may have. A skill is a skill. And so analyzing a text is a skill that can be developed. It's like people say, oh, well, Chinese people, I've heard Westerners say, Chinese people are not very creative or they don't have very innovative mindsets. But innovation and creativity, I believe, are both skills that can be developed. And as a matter of fact, whenever I'd ask when I would challenge those Westerners who would say those things, and I would ask them, so can you give me an example of 3 creative thinking skills? Go. They'd be like, they don't even know how to define what creativity really means, especially in the context of education. So, not that, having theory and being able to do it practically, of course, are 2 different things. But I think in order to have a foundational understanding, you should be able to explain it a little bit. And a lot of times those people who would say those kinds of things really didn't know what they were talking about. So I do believe that even aside from what Westerners may think about, Chinese people being less creative and less able to do analytical thinking, I think that everyone in China can be taught these kinds of skills, 21st century skills, having a global mindset. It'll be a little bit more difficult with the global mindset part because there are a little bit more restrictions on like the use of internet and being able to have access to like YouTube, for example, which has tons of resources. There are some things that are not allowed here. And that, of course, would slow down things, but I don't think that it completely does away with their opportunity to be able to learn those skills. So I think it's extremely effective because it's teaching them and preparing them for the 21st century. I really do believe that.
So I have a question here.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Like what you said, actually Chinese people are maybe a little bit, for some aspects, like for critical thinking, I think Chinese people, they were not encouraged to question or to challenge their teachers or the government. So I think for sure on this point, they were less trained to even how to ask the question,
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the classroom itself, it's a lot of times, not every time, because there's a Wang Laoshi who teaches Chinese, and who taught my daughter Chinese. She was very good at implementing 21st century skills and different kinds of teaching methodologies in the classroom. She did a great job. Wonderful teacher. Although she did teach in an international school for several years before coming to SMIC school, which I don't know why she left, but that's aside from the point. One thing I would say is that a lot of times in Chinese schools, especially in the public schools, the classroom is very teacher-centered. You see them, you can even look at videos on the internet, and you see them just in rows. The students are sitting in rows. They're not allowed to talk. They're sitting upright, very proper. They don't talk. The teacher gives a lecture on a PowerPoint, and that's the class. If they talk, it's because the teacher told them to talk. Now, that's going to make the students have a specific type of mindset that helps them to think a very certain way. Like, I should only talk when I'm told to talk. I should only think and say what I was told to think and say. But I don't think that has to be that way. Even if the government wants them to obey, even if the government was like, I just want you to obey, it doesn't have to be sitting in rows and with a teacher-centered classroom. Like, I want my children to obey me, but I do it in a loving way, and I still help them to think about the consequences of their actions and why they need to obey. Like, I'm looking out for their good, and I want them to prosper, so they should obey because I have wisdom that they don't have, and I'm helping them to learn what that is. There are no Americans in the class except for me. I'm the only American. It says, what efforts are made? And Megan and I, we were very much about trying these things and doing these things and really wanting to make our school better and connect it to the world and to the future. And I think we did a good job. We had a lot to improve, and I think that if we could have kept going, it would have been better and better and better. So.
Okay, I'm going to stop.